Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Culture Connection Speaker Series. I am Michael Beckelhimer in Washington, D.C. This program is presented by the American Center of Moscow, which is supported by the American Embassy in Moscow. If you're watching on the American Center's YouTube or VK channels, please post your comments and questions at any time, and we'll ask them to our guest. So today we're talking to Tom Plott, who is an actor and the manager of character interpretation at George Washington's home, Mount Vernon. Tom has made a career of portraying historical characters from Shakespeare to Da Vinci to John Wilkes Booth. He currently portrays George Washington's personal physician, Dr. James Craik, the first physician general of the United States. He portrays Dr. Craik at Mount Vernon. And we're going to talk to him today about Mount Vernon, George Washington's legacy, and Dr. Craik. Tom, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.
It's great to have you. It's great to talk about Mount Vernon too, because this is a place that so many people love. It really brings Americans together. This appreciation for George Washington, Mount Vernon, and the fact that you're working there and working with the people who portrayed the historical figures who lived and worked at Mount Vernon alongside George Washington. It's just very fascinating. But I'd like to start with asking you a little bit about yourself.
Sure.
And sort of how you became a reenactor of historical figures.
Well, first off, I am not a reenactor. To me, reenactors are people who will recreate, moments in history. I consider myself either a historical actor or a character interpreter. I do the research to find out about certain characters from history, their lives, their relationships, their accomplishments, and I give a personality, a life to that person. A lot of reenactors will reenact this specific event, like I said, but where, as say Dr. Craik, I'm open to talking to people and answering their questions. It's not a specific event. It's more of an embodiment of that person. And I think it is one of those things that really gives people a better viewpoint into history. Growing up, I was never a big history student. I was a performer kid. I wanted to always be, on stage, do this, do that. And I fell into this historic acting field. When I attended university, I was a theater student. I got my degree in acting. And with that, I studied the classics. I was a Shakespearean actor. And, this is what sort of led me down this road to becoming a historical actor. When I graduated and became a professional actor, I started falling into things where people, like I said, would say, oh, we need someone who to play Shakespeare. Oh, well, Tom's classically trained. He can do that. Or we need someone to be Leonardo da Vinci. Tom's classically trained. He can do that. So I sort of fell into being one of the go-to guys to portray people from history. And with that, it led me to Mount Vernon, and here I am. So
what were the circumstances when someone said, we need someone to portray Shakespeare? What was the setting for that?
One of the times, because I've played Shakespeare a few times, it was for a private event at a library as for an evening of Shakespeare. So they wanted someone basically a Shakespeare to host. So there I was. I did that. Leonardo da Vinci I did that for a corporate training program, and that was a lot of fun because it was multimedia. I was on camera, I was on stage, I was running around here and there, and it was a lot of fun for me because they actually brought in a makeup artist to make me look like old Leonardo da Vinci. So it was pretty cool to have that and be like, wow, this is amazing that I get to portray, well, all of these people from history, um, and make it more accessible to people who don't necessarily think they are a history person, but they can, become one by actually meeting people from history. Because in our day and age, people are more video oriented,
Mhm.
seeing, moving, TV, movies, all that, online. Not many people are reading, you know, books as in depth as they used to. So it's up to me to bring that information off of the page and put it into the public's eyes and ears and minds. So I find it, just a wonderful opportunity to share my skill as an actor, but also to, make people more interested in history. You know, modern day here. Um, uh, Hamilton. Hamilton, I think, is one of the most fantastic things ever, simply because
Musical.
Lin-Manuel Miranda, yeah,
Yeah.
he took, the history of Alexander Hamilton, the start of the United States, and he made it accessible to everybody by doing that, by having the music, and the different styles of music, the multicultural casting. It just was a brilliant stroke of genius that really was fantastic to make history accessible for everyone, to people who wouldn't necessarily think this is my history, because all history is everyone's history. So I think that helped to bring it home.
At what point did you, so you started out as an actor. At
Right.
what point did you, the sort of the theme of this series is really about American ingenuity, how,
Hmm.
people go out, they explore their passions, they really get in
Hmm.
touch with who they are, and then they make a living from it. They create a
Yeah.
career for themselves. They follow their dreams. Of course, that's the dream. We don't always do it. But
Well, I
I'm
am living my dream.
I
So,
am interviewing people who are living their dreams,
yeah.
perhaps wishing I was living my dream. Um, so, at what point did you determine in your life that acting and then historical interpretation was your life's story?
Well, okay, let's go back to high school. High school, I loved science. I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to study biochemistry. I wanted to be in a lab working on, you know, um, suspended animation. I wanted to do all this. But I also loved doing plays in school. And they sort of kept neck and neck, science and acting, science and acting. And when I went to college, I sort of decided, I really don't want to live my life in a lab, but if I'm on stage, I could portray a scientist. I could do this. So I then went into acting. So I was like, okay, acting is going to be my thing. Um, Love being on stage. When you graduate, not everybody gets to be on stage. So you have to start finding different venues. And now, sometimes I'll teach acting to students and I'll tell them, they say, you know, who are professional actors? And they're like, people on TV, people in movies, people on Broadway. And then they stop. But there are so many different places. There are people who, in the medical field, portray professional patients. Because a lot of doctors can't just go, well, I've never seen someone this way. And you don't want to just immediately bring them in and go, here's a patient with this, and have them make a mistake. It's easier to make a mistake on an actor who's just portraying that. So you have people who do that in science and such. And I started going into the history field of it. And lo and behold, it took off for me. I was able to work here at Mount Vernon, as George Washington's doctor. Then I expanded to be his farm manager also. And then I became the manager of my department. And I've been doing this for 17 years now. So, there aren't a lot of professional actors who can say, yes, I've been working consistently for 17 years. So, so
That is impressive.
yeah,
So, Anton, in the background, I'll ask you to put up the presentation. I have a few slides here.
yeah.
Just want to talk. We want to talk a bit about Mount Vernon. When and how did you arrive at Mount Vernon?
Uh, July 1st, 2008, I arrived at Mount Vernon. That was my first day at work. I had been working previously with a tour company as their entertainment director. So doing historic tours and uh, water tours of Annapolis Harbor and such as that. Um, and I left that job. It just wasn't what I wanted. And a friend of mine sent me an email saying, "Hey, they're looking for someone to be George Washington's doctor. Sounds like it's right up your alley. You should give them a call." So I did. I came in for an audition to be George Washington's doctor, Dr. James Craik. And they were looking at two different people that they wanted. They wanted either a Dr. Craik or they wanted a William Lee. William Lee was George Washington's enslaved valet who was with him all throughout the Revolutionary War, a very important man in not only Washington's life, but in the history of our country. So I go in, I audition, and they decide that they are going to hire William Lee. So they hire someone to be William Lee. So I lose that audition. So a couple of months later, I get a call saying, "Would you be interested in a part-time job as Dr. Craik?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'm out of work. Lovely. Let's do this." So I came in and learned everything I could about Dr. Craik and started out and kept going. And in less than a year, they made me full-time. And at just about a year, they made me the manager of my department. So it was a quick ascension to the position I'm in now. So
Yes.
But yeah, it was a fascinating thing, and it really is just to come out here every day to George Washington's home. You know, George Washington's home is my theater. I mean, that's absolutely amazing to me. Here is this, you know, the rest of the world, other countries have, you know, so many buildings and things like that that are hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Their history is this, and you know, but the United States, you know, we're not even 300 years. So it's like, well, what are our great landmarks and everything? And Mount Vernon to me is one of those landmarks. We didn't have, you know, all these political buildings like Parliament and all that when the country first started. We were, you know, doing stuff in halls and things like that. But George Washington's home became a focal point for a lot of people, as, you know, something that was a cornerstone of our history. And to be out here every day, you know, working here is just a phenomenal, you know, honor and opportunity for me. And the Mount Vernon Ladies Association has really done a marvelous job of, you know, taking care of the property, making sure that it is accessible to everyone, that, you know, everybody can come and experience, you know, George Washington's home and see the things that, you know, Washington did, and maybe meet a few people from Washington's life. So
Well, they are the reason the Mount Vernon Ladies Association.
mm-hmm.
They are the reason that George Washington's Mount Vernon is still standing.
Oh, right? Yes, yeah.
It was always intended to be a national historic mm-hmm. landmark. Mm-hmm. They worked to preserve it and turn it into this beautiful.
Yeah, when they bought the property back in the 1800s, it was in disrepair. The piazza on the back, the roof of that was being held up by broken ship's masts.
Here.
So yeah, you can see there where the columns are, broken ship's masts were holding those up. And when they bought it, they were, you know, these ladies, all very philanthropic. They were, you know, raising money. They grew plants here from the clippings of Mount Vernon's plants and sold those to raise money. And they themselves raised the money, didn't take any government money to make Mount Vernon what it is today, to preserve it, to restore it, to make sure that, you know, it's open for everyone. So the ladies have, you know, really deserve, you know, a giant round of applause, a standing ovation. to put it in theatrical terms, but also just great honor to do what they've done to save Mount Vernon. And without them, it wouldn't be here.
Do you remember when you first saw Mount Vernon? Like, were you a fan of Mount Vernon? Had you visited before you got the invitation to come there and possibly work?
I had visited long before that. When I say long before that, I mean probably another 10, 15 years earlier. I think it was on 4th of July. And my wife's father, who was with the National Concert Band, tuba player, he was playing a concert out here. They play out there every year, and we went out for that. And I got a quick tour of the mansion, and it was it's very impressive and everything like that. But the real weight of the history of it didn't really hit me until I started working here. And that's when you start learning so much more. And, it just becomes this awe-inspiring thing that you want to share all of this information with as many people as you can. Now, when I came to Mount Vernon those years before, there wasn't a character interpretation department. So there were no people doing what I do. So it was a different experience altogether. So, but nowadays, we've got people out here portraying people from all different walks of George Washington's life out here to be, informative and inspiring to people like George Washington. So,
like George Washington.
yeah.
So then let's talk then about Dr. James Craig. This is the
yes.
character you portray.
Yeah.
Would like to learn about him, but also understand your process for becoming James Craig. Like how long did that take? Where did you start? Because just for our audience, this character, this individual, James Craig, he's not a well-known figure.
No.
Not like George Washington, who everybody knows.
Exactly.
You only get to know him if you come to Mount Vernon and meet him.
Yeah.
Then you realize he's an important figure in George Washington's life. So where did you start?
Well, when you first get here, we are very, very blessed to be able to have the George Washington Library here also. So we have, letters between Dr. Craig and George Washington. We have, journals. We have all sorts of different things to go back. But then, because, as you said, he's not a very famous character, there aren't really any books written about him. There are a few papers and things like that. So you start searching out these papers and these contacts and, searching Scotland, because Dr. Craig's originally from Scotland. So that becomes part of my research. It's like, okay, he wasn't born here in Virginia. George Washington was born here in Virginia, so he'll have a Virginia accent. Dr. Craig doesn't come to Virginia until he is an adult. He studies at the University of Edinburgh to become a doctor. And then when he leaves the university, he joins the military and is eventually sent to Virginia. So Dr. Craig's got to have a Scottish accent. I myself have never been to Scotland. So I had to learn a Scottish accent for the role. That was luckily I'm a mimic. So they gave me a CD that had Scottish accents. So first off, I had to figure out where Dr. Craig was actually from in Scotland, so I could figure out what Scottish accent he had. So Dr. Craig was from a small place called Cucubre, and that's near Edinburgh. So I decided on an Edinburgh accent because he had also gone to school in Edinburgh. So, but then you go with the Edinburgh accent, but then a lot of people will have trouble understanding the Scottish accent if you go full tilt with it. So I had to smooth it out, give it he's been here for a few years feel, so that, smooth it out to where it is still a Scottish accent, but everybody can understand you. So I do that. You research as much as you can about his life, his family, um, where he was during the war, you know, what his relationship was with George Washington. And then I start forming a character for it. Um, the reports that I've found, one description of him said that he was a gregarious, an outgoing man. And then you read things about George Washington where they say that he was quieter, he was reserved. So I'm like, how are these guys best friends? So I came up with the thought, George Washington liked having him around because he did all the talking. He didn't have to bother himself with much conversation. I'm sure he did have conversations, and to great extent. But these two gentlemen become good friends. They serve through 2 wars together. Um, they live not far from each other. George Washington has Dr. Craik as his personal physician, which some people go, oh, George Washington was Dr. Craik's only patient. Personal physician is their term of saying family doctor.
Mm-hmm.
So Dr. Craik becomes the family doctor and a lifelong friend of George Washington. He knew George Washington longer than Martha knew George Washington. So pretty cool.
Because they had fought. Did they fight alongside each other?
Yes, during the French and Indian War and the Revolutionary War. In the French and Indian War, they're both members of the Virginia Regiment. Dr. Craik is the surgeon for the regiment, and George Washington will eventually rise to be a lieutenant colonel. And then during the Revolutionary War, of course, George Washington is commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, and Dr. Craik becomes the Surgeon General of the Army. So he is basically like second in command of the medical corps for the Continental Army. So still an important man. So.
And did George Washington, how did James Craik, Dr. Craik, end up in Alexandria? Did George Washington ask him to move?
Okay.
Or?
When they first meet, Dr. Craik is living in Winchester, Virginia. That's basically when he comes to Virginia, he'll end up out near Winchester. He's the doctor there. And George Washington ends up there. He's working on Fort Loudon. And they both end up in the Virginia Regiment there. Once they become good friends and everything, George Washington is like, you should move closer. You should come to Alexandria. So he comes to Alexandria. He then moves to Port Tobacco. Then George Washington is like, come back to Alexandria. So it's sort of at George Washington's behest that he comes to the Alexandria area and near Mount Vernon. So the two buddies can be together. It's like, if you've got your best friend and they live across the country and you're like, oh, come on, move over here. It'll be great. Come on, we can do all this. So, and eventually, he might end up there, and there you go. You and your best friend are close again and can visit each other whenever you want. And that's what Craik and Washington did. So
I have a slide of Dr. Craik's house.
Yes.
In Alexandria. This is, people in Alexandria will see this house, and this is how people here understand that Dr. Craik was an important historical figure.
Oh yeah.
They see this beautiful house, they see his grave at a nearby churchyard.
Yeah.
How far was this from Mount Vernon? Like, I know it's a few miles.
It's about 12 miles.
How long did it take Dr. Craik to get to Mount Vernon?
About 2.5 hours by horseback. So not far. Not far. People go 2.5 hours. It's like, you got to remember, it's a different time. Two and a half hour horseback ride is not going to be like, oh my Lord, that's so far. So it's like city life, when you have a commute that's like, an hour and a half, it's no big deal. But if you're in the country and you have a 30-minute commute, you're like, goodness, it's on the other side of the world. Well, the roads are getting better, so the time is cutting down a little bit on the traffic between Alexandria and Mount Vernon. And he's not going there every single day. He goes out there when he's called out, when people are sick, or he goes out there in social occasions. And a lot of times, if he's going out for a social occasion, he gets late, he just stays. He'll stay the night. Same with Washington. Washington actually has a home in Alexandria also.
Mm-hmm.
So if he comes to see Dr. Craig, he'll stay in his Alexandria home for the night. So, but the house is wonderful. I was very, very lucky to get to actually, I met the family who owns Dr. Craig's home now, and they invited me to dinner because they were a fan of Dr. Craig. And I've gotten to know them. They're just beautiful people, and gave me a tour of Dr. Craig's home, which gave me so much insight into the man, into just I don't have the words to say how wonderful it was to be able to do that. I hope I get to go back again.
Well, I think that's something that everyone who loves history appreciates,
Yeah.
when you can actually be in the place where the history happened.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And for a figure like Dr. Craig, who, as you said, is not famous,
Mm-hmm.
it's very unusual, I think, to be able to be in this person's home
Yes,
and have access to that history.
And to have it preserved.
Right.
It is, there have been some additions and things to it, but the main part of the home is as it was. I mean, it is, they haven't removed walls and, stuck new things here or there. It's a gorgeous home, and it's, I really, really just found it just a phenomenal opportunity.
There is a swimming pool in the back, and
there's a swimming pool in the back now. That was not there. That was not there.
Washington never swam in that pool.
No.
Let's talk about your work with the tourists, the people who come to Mount Vernon. What is it do you actually do? Do you walk around? Do you stay in a particular room and talk to people as they come through? What do you do there as Dr. Craig?
I do basically what you just said. For our character interpreters, which is what we are environmental. So if you are in line to go into the mansion, or if you're walking the grounds, you might encounter one of the character interpreters. And you're able to talk to them. They can give you insight and give you brief little snippets about things here and there. Like, I can tell you trees that were planted when George Washington was here. I can give you information about the greenhouse, do all sorts of different things. Also, we have walking tours that we do. We have called a Through My Eyes tour, whereas James Anderson, the farm manager, I give a tour of the heritage breed animals. So these are the same basic breeds that George Washington would have had when he was here. So I talk about the animals and how they were used, and how George Washington was, a man who didn't want anything wasted and insisted that everyone work. So how are the animals working for Washington? So I give them insight into that. We also have what we call our interpretive center, which is a small theater setup where the characters are in there, and we have some scripted programs that we'll do. And then we also have what we call our character conversations. These are where a character will be there in the little theater area, and you go in and you can talk to them. You can ask them any questions that you like. You can, get your picture taken. You can do anything to, learn a little bit more. And I really like having the characters out, because not only does it get to give people more information about people like Dr. Craig and James Anderson and William Lee, Ona Judge, people like that, but also it gives you another insight into George Washington. It is a lens that you can learn more about George Washington, learn more personal aspects of Washington, not just, battles and dates and bills and, the presidency and all that. You can learn more about the man himself,
And, I have a picture here of you as, as a doctor holding an instrument.
That is the capital saw.
I'm sure most patients don't want to see their doctor holding that.
Oh yeah, the capital saw is used to amputate arms and legs. so,
Sure. That's
so yeah,
all.
I have my whole doctor's box. That's one of the programs that we do. I have an 18th century Revolutionary War medicine program where I talk about, um, basically what medicine is like in the 18th century. And I go through my doctor's box and I show everybody the different tools that I have. Uh, I actually play a game with people and say, okay, what do you think this does? What does it do? You know, and you get guesses, and they're usually wrong. But when you tell them what they're used for, a lot of people are fascinated by it. Matter of fact, um, there was a young girl from Oklahoma. I had gone out to Oklahoma for a student program out there, and I go out there often. And she saw the medical program, and she decided that she wanted to become a nurse. And then several years later, I go back to do these programs again, and one of the people in charge said, "Well, you might not remember, but there was a girl who wanted to become a nurse after seeing your program. Just wanted to let you know she's now a nurse." So I was like, I'm an inspiration. But actually, Dr. Craig was an inspiration.
Right.
I was just the vessel. So,
Well, that's interesting that 18th century medicine inspired her to be a 21st century nurse.
well, yeah. I mean, it's, medicine is still medicine. And the evolution of it is fascinating. And it's one of those fields that will forever be evolving. As new things are discovered, the knowledge grows, and as the knowledge grows, the treatments change. As the treatments change, they get better, and eventually, hopefully, one of these days, the only thing doctors will do is go, "Hey, you look good.
Right.
Get something nice to eat." So
We'll
hopefully,
never
we won't
die.
have to worry about a lot of stuff.
So speaking of medicine and
Yeah.
treatments, of course, there is a lot of talk around
Mhm.
Dr. Craik's relationship with George Washington when George Washington died.
Okay.
That's a very important part of the history here, because he died rather unexpectedly and
Yeah.
quickly, and
Mhm.
you, as Dr. Craik, were at his bedside when he
Yes.
died.
Yes.
Um, tell us tell us a little bit about his death and what
Okay.
Dr. Craik's role was in helping him.
All right. First off, George Washington died of a disease called quinsy. Now, in modern day, we know it as epiglottitis, a bacterial infection of the epiglottis. Epiglottis is the flap in your throat between your trachea and your esophagus. Keeps food out of your lungs, air out of your stomach. When you get an infection in that, it swells up like a cork in your throat. You can't eat, you can't drink, and eventually you can't breathe. Now, George Washington falls ill with this. Um, it's very, very aggressive. From first symptom to death with George Washington, it's 36 hours. So a day and a half is what it takes. So George Washington falls ill. Eventually, Dr. Craik is called in. I say eventually because Dr. Craik is not called in until 24 hours into the illness. Because George Washington, is Martha Washington and his secretary, Tobias Lear, both encouraged George Washington to try sage tea and vinegar gargle with honey to try to soothe the throat. But he's like, no, you know me. I take nothing for such matters. They encourage him to call the doctor. It'll go as it came. So in the wee hours of the morning the next day, he wakes up and he has difficulty breathing. So he's like, well, it's time to send for the doctor. Dr. Craik arrives, diagnoses it as quinsy, which quinsy in that day, epiglottitis in that day, is pretty much a fatal disease. There's no cure. All they have are treatments to try to help the body fight against it. So they have, and the treatments that here I go into Dr. Craik, that Dr. Craik and the other doctors will employ will be a sage tea and vinegar gargle. But George Washington can't gargle. He nearly suffocates trying. So they do vinegar vapors. Vinegar with a hot iron doused into it creates a steam. Inhale the steam. Now, the reason they're doing this is they're trying to get that vinegar to basically help to scour the infection from the throat. So they also place plasters of camphor upon the chest to try to ease the breathing. Oatmeal wraps soaking in the feet. This is to try to, I think, help pull the blood from the inflammation, to pull it lower in the body so that it'll, ease the inflammation and he'll be able to breathe. Blistering, bloodletting, again, to try to pull the inflammation, to remove the bad blood, to reduce the fever. With the blistering, they'll use basically Spanish fly ground up into a wet linen and placing it on the flesh. It creates a tremendous blood blister. So it's going to pull the blood out. With the bloodletting, very narrow, very sharp knife, lance or lancet, they'll call it. They'll drain out a pint of blood. Now, this is where controversy comes in, because during this final illness, George Washington has bled 4 times. That's 4 pints of blood. Well, actually, we're not sure exactly how much, because the first bloodletting is not done by the doctors. It's done by one of the overseers, Mr. Rollins. But Mr. Rollins is a little nervous, and the blood is thick, so it's not flowing as well as it should. And George Washington keeps saying, take more, take more, take more. So we don't know if it's less than a pint or if it's a lot more than a pint. So we're not exactly sure how much blood is taken, but all this is...
Where did they cut him to get the blood?
They're going to bleed from his throat to try to pull the blood from there.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So fun. Yeah, with the bloodletting, I think I saw a chart where it's like over 100 and something spots on the body where you can bleed someone. So, yikes.
But it didn't work.
No. Like I said, there was no cure for it. At one point, George Washington says to the doctor, I feel myself going. I thank you for your attention, but you should not take any more troubles about me, but let me go off quietly. I cannot last long. And unfortunately, he was correct. So, yeah.
So tell us about the people that you meet with, the tourists, when you tell these stories. Mm-hmm. What are they most interested in knowing? Do they know who Dr. Craik is? What kinds of questions do they ask?
Well, for the most part, most people are not going to know who Dr. Craik is until they meet me. Mm-hmm. But when they do meet me, as they learn that I'm George Washington's personal physician, his good friend and everything, one of the first questions is always, how did he die? The second most question is, why did you bleed him to death? So, which I always have to, in my little 18th century doctor way, I get offended by that because they didn't really bleed him to death. The disease, even in modern time, has been back diagnosed to be epiglottitis. And that in itself is very, very deadly. Even in modern day now, when we have antibiotics and we have an inoculation against Haemophilus, the bacteria that causes it, people can still get epiglottitis, and it can kill in as little as like 3 hours. So, wow. It's a crazy disease. So I have to inform them that no, the bloodletting did not kill him. That it didn't help, but it didn't kill him. But there are some doctors who have said that because of the amount of blood that they took and the frequency that they took it, so it wasn't all taken at once, because of that, frequency and the amounts taken, they basically kept George Washington in a perpetual lightheaded state so that he didn't feel pain, which, in the grand scheme of things is probably about the best thing that they could have done if they couldn't cure him. So,
right. So it didn't hurt him, but it actually may have helped him be more comfortable.
Exactly. Yeah.
In your role as manager of all of these characters,
Hmm.
what do you do? How many characters, how many figures are there at Mount Vernon? That how many people are playing these roles? Who are the people who come to Mount Vernon? Who comes to Mount Vernon to act in these roles?
Well, it is a variety of people. I've hired actors, I've hired historians, I've hired people who have never done it before.
Mhm.
Um, it takes a special person to do this because you're not only learning all of this information about these characters, but you're also have to have the ability to pull that information up and deliver it as yourself, as this person speaking, not as a, and here is a fact for you. You have to do it as a personal experience. Um, and you also have to be ready if they ask you a question you don't know, because we're learning as much as we can, but there are still things that we don't know. Uh, and that's not any fault of ours. It's just that that thing wasn't written down, or we haven't found the letter that has that information in it yet. So, um, our performers, our character interpreters, have to be able to pivot and adjust and try to work around it to where either they can satisfy the person's curiosity, or they can uh, bring them around to wanting to know something else without getting to know what they originally wanted to know. Um, we divert. so,
Right.
so
Because
yes,
you can't say I am Dr. Craig, but I don't know this answer about myself.
right. Yeah. Well, that's one of the things. I'll tell you, and please don't anybody watch this who's going to come and do this to me at Mount Vernon. Uh, One of the things that I have yet to find is the name of Dr. Craig's mother. Don't know it.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
What is your mother's name?
Yeah.
Ah,
Father's William Craig. I know that. You know, he's a Scottish laird. But his mother, still don't know. Still don't know.
but
So,
because you all are committed to
mhm.
actual facts and the
Yeah.
truth, you don't create
No,
information. You don't make up names.
that is the number one rule is don't make things up.
Right.
We can only say what can be confirmed, what can be, documented. So we can't just start pulling things out of our hats and say, oh, well, Dr. Craig's mother was an Indian princess by the name of, you know, whatever. It's like, nope, 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 don't know
Right.
who she was. Sorry.
Right.
So I try to go around and around and start talking about Dr. Craig's father and get far afield and then go into my own history. And
Uh,
then hopefully they forgot that they asked me my mom's name.
right.
So
Um, is there documentation for this camel? That's
yes. Uh, In 1787, George Washington paid a man 18 shillings to bring a camel to Mount Vernon. George Washington loved exotic things. He'd paid to see a lion, a tiger, an elephant. So, uh, when he heard a man was coming through Alexandria with a camel, he was like, I gotta see it. So he paid the man 18 shillings to bring the camel to Mount Vernon so his friends and family could witness the wonder of the camel. And this is my buddy Aladdin. And Aladdin comes out every year at Christmas time to be with us. He's here from the Tuesday before Thanksgiving to January 6th. He's really grown up here. Um, you know, he's 17 years old and he's been coming out here 17 years. And if you notice something, that's the same amount of time that I've been here. So Aladdin and I started the same year. As you can see, we are good friends. So he's my buddy. He's a fun animal, and just I would have never thought. I think a camel is a cool animal, but I tell you, the more I got to learn about them, and I got to meet him, um, you know, he is just an amazing, amazing animal. Camels are amazing. I learned so much, and people wanted to know so much that eventually they told me here, they said, you should do, like a camel talk. You should go. So during the winter months when he's here, I go out there and twice a day I'll give camel talks. I'll talk about George Washington and the camel. I'll talk about camels themselves. I'll talk about Aladdin himself, and we have a grand time.
Where does Aladdin normally live the rest of the year?
Um, I think he's still on a farm in Berryville, Virginia.
Virginia.
So, yeah.
So he doesn't come very far.
Well, it's a little ways. So, but
Well.
in camel travel, it's a ways.
Since all of you are actors, or many of you are actors working there, do you ever think about writing scripts and creating performances?
Oh, we do. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So you
we do.
create events or conversations.
Oh yeah, we've done a lot of that. Like I said, my 18th century medical Revolutionary War medicine program, Tobias Lear has one called Addressing the Nation, which is about manners and society. We have a multi-person performance, which is Christopher Shields' Waiting for My Time, which tells the story of Christopher Shields, who was George Washington's valet at the end of his life, who was actually planning, he's an enslaved valet, he was planning to run away with his wife, escape to freedom. And he and his wife, who is enslaved on another farm, West Grove, which is owned by Colonel West. And so they're writing letters back and forth. Well, at some point, one of the letters gets dropped and found. And Christopher, basically, his plans are foiled. He cannot and does not escape. So it's the story of Christopher's life and him wanting to become free, just like, everyone, and how his plans fall apart. So it's very touching program. So, yeah.
One of the characters that your team portrays there is Ona Judge.
Yes.
Right. Who is an enslaved. Is she an aide to?
She's a lady's maid, so she works directly with Martha Washington.
What is her story, and who portrays her, and what is that like for the actors who portray this enslaved woman? And how does the public interact with her?
Well, having members of the enslaved community represented here is very important to us because, the people who lived at Mount Vernon, the majority of them were enslaved people. Now, Ona Judge is a lady's maid with Martha Washington, and she travels with the Washingtons to the presidency. And while in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania has the Gradual Abolition Act. So if you're there for 6 months and you're enslaved, you're free. So the Washingtons have a workaround for this. So every 4 or 5 months, they go, oh, you got to go back to Mount Vernon and get something, or you got to go back here. And they send them away, and then they'll bring them back. It gets known. And Ona Judge, when she learns that she's going to be a wedding gift for one of Martha's granddaughters, she just can't take it. And, this yearning for freedom becomes the driving force in her life. So she escapes to her freedom. And when she escapes to her freedom, the Washingtons are, trying to get her back. So they're, having her search for. They find out where she is at one point, and they send someone to her to say, hey, come back. You can come back. You won't get in. And she's like, why? I'm free. And, So it's a story of, her freedom. And we have a wonderful young woman by the name of Timbala Cabaret, who portrays Ona for us. And she is a marvelous performer. And, her portrayal of Ona is a very fine performance, very informative, and very important, because you learn that these people had life beyond being enslaved. We refer to the enslaved community here as enslaved, as opposed to calling them slaves, because by having them referred to as being as like an enslaved lady's maid, an enslaved valet, it helps to give them their humanity. Because if you just refer to them as slaves, it's that whole object property, but they're people, so they were enslaved. It was not their choice. If anybody is enslaved, their choice would always be to be free. No one wants to be enslaved. So these stories of the battles for freedom, their struggles for freedom, whether it is achieved or thwarted, they're important stories. And that's why we have all of these represented here at Mount Vernon, so that we can always remember where our country was and how far it's come, and hopefully how we'll keep moving forward. So yeah.
Is there an actor, a George Washington character that walks around regularly, or is George Washington only there on special occasions?
Our George Washington is here on special occasions. So much like George Washington in his actual life, who was, away to war and the presidency for, a lot of that time, we have our interpreter who portrays George Washington, who comes in for special events and different occasions, private occasions and such. So he's a very fine performer, Douglas Thomas. So he's a good man. So good George Washington. We like him.
So he's a recent hire, right?
Yes, he's brand new this year.
So what happened to the last George Washington?
Just contracts and things. So we go to new people. So yeah.
And so what's the process then for finding a new George Washington?
Well, first we put the news out, that put the word out that we're looking for a new George Washington, and then we'll take people who portray George Washington in other places, because there are a lot of people who do this. And George Washington is a popular character, but we are looking for that special person who can be Mount Vernon's George Washington, be a true, honest representation of George Washington. And these people come in to interview and audition with us. I was very lucky to be on the panel to observe the people auditioning to be Washington. And we see how they do with that. We have them meet some of our patrons and such, so that they come out, and I will be out as Dr. Craig with them and work with them on the grounds, see how they handle working with our guests and things. And then eventually the choices are made. It goes through us, and then the Mount Vernon ladies will choose the George Washington that we are to have, and they always do a good job of it, I think. So
how much research, I understand there's a lot of research in order to become that character.
Oh yeah.
Part of the job, continuing to research, continuing to develop maybe expertise in new areas. How is that part of the job? Do people have time to go do research and learn more, or how does that work?
Yeah, with my staff, it's built in. When we have slower seasons and such, and the schedule is lighter, we will build in research time for people to continue researching. for their characters or to portray new characters. Our gentleman who portrays Christopher Shields has recently started performing as Peter Hardiman, who is the enslaved groom for George Washington, who works with the breeding of mules and such. And it's a very interesting character, interesting man to get to know. And he's out on the grounds now with the horses. Matter of fact.
So you have a rotating cast. It's like always evolving. More characters are coming.
Our staff, I have a staff of, let's see, we have Christopher Peter, we have Tobias Lear, we have Ona Judge, we have Nellie Custis, we have Martha Washington. Did I say Tobias Lear?
Yes.
And then, and me. So, and then we also have Eleanor Calvert Custis Stewart. So we have a variety of different colors, six, seven of us, and everybody can't work every single day. So we rotate people in and out. So if you come one day, you could see, the doctor, and the next day you may see his secretary. You come another day, you'll see Ona Judge, and another day you'll see Peter Hardiman. Come several days of the week, you'll see Martha Washington. So
I was there last year at Christmas, and there were a lot of you were working.
Yeah, that's a busy time. Busy times, so more of us work. Yeah.
Yes. It was very cool. There was a candlelight tour of the house.
Okay, so you came for candlelight. Yeah.
Yes.
That's our Christmas program that we do out here, Candlelight at Mount Vernon. And we're very excited right now because for the past several years, we have been doing what we call the Road to the Revolution. So each year at Candlelight is being portrayed a specific year leading up to. So this year will be 1775. And then next year will be 1776. So right up to the Revolution. So, and it's very, very amazing. But interesting that there are a lot of things that happen at Christmas time during the 18th century. So this year is going to be another run for it. So
this has to be a very exciting time, with
the
250th anniversary of the Revolution
coming up
next year, and all of this preparation.
I'm
sure you have
lots for it.
A lot of programming. Get the camel ready.
Yep. Aladdin will be out. I am sure of it. He's and I'll be there with him. So
are there other characters that you have thought of portraying, or that you would want to do?
Well, I've
or elsewhere.
I've briefly played other characters here for different programs, because if you need a different character for a program, we can have someone, if it's a scripted program, you can do that without, tons of research. So I have been Lund Washington, George Washington's cousin. I've been Lawrence Lewis, his nephew. I've been one of the overseers before, and then I'm James Anderson also. So I've been a few people, but as far as any that I would like to be, I really like being Dr. Craig and James Anderson. If there was another person, I haven't found him yet that but I'm willing to learn about anybody and give it a shot anytime. So
that's wonderful. Let's keep life interesting.
Yeah.
Well, Tom, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Really fascinating conversation, and I hope to see you at Mount Vernon sometime soon.
Oh yeah, please come out.
Hear you in your Scottish accent.
There you go. That'll be all right.
Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care, Mark.